submitted. As the forum progresses, we encourage stakeholders to keep an eye out on our interactive agenda for announcements about exciting workshops and our various ICT for Development related special tracks, many of which have already been inaugurated successfully, such as the ICTs and Gender Mainstreaming track, the ICTs for Wellbeing and Happiness track, the ICTs and Accessibility for Persons with Disabilities and Specific Needs track, as well as the ICT and Older Persons track, and the Cybersecurity track. In addition, we're pleased to have opened our high-level track on March 22nd, which featured the appointment of the 2021 WSIS Forum Chairman. The high-level policy sessions featured during the high-level track are moderated by high-level track facilitators nominated by the WSIS stakeholders during the open consultation process. These sessions will gather over 100 high-ranking officials of the WSIS stakeholder community, with 35 ministers, deputies, and ambassadors, and more than 30 heads of regulatory bodies, private sector, civil society, academia, and the technical community. Other exciting tracks will be opening soon, all of which you can find more information about on our interactive agenda and website. In addition to these exciting tracks, building on the title of this year's forum, ICTs for Inclusive, Resilient, and Sustainable Societies and Economies, we're hosting a series of related workshops showcasing the work of our stakeholders, including our series of bi-weekly workshops which demonstrate how our stakeholders used ICTs to respond to the coronavirus pandemic. The work of our stakeholders is also displayed on our virtual exhibition space that was inaugurated on March 15th. Various other networking and social events will also be integrated into the forum, with meet and greet opportunities and frequent social media posts and engagements, as well as engagements during internationally recognized UN days and weeks. In addition, with more than 1,000 registered participants, the Aging Better with ICTs Hackathon is still live. Hackers had the opportunity to meet with experts in the field of ICTs and aging during the 3 mentorship sessions featured. Submission phase will end on the 18th of April. Stay tuned for announcements of the 4 winners on May 17th during the final week of the 2021 WSIS Forum. In addition to this exciting hackathon, we're pleased to announce that the WSIS Forum special track on ICTs and older persons will be initiating a special prize this year entitled the WSIS Healthy Aging Innovation Prize, with more information available on our website. We look forward to your participation and thank stakeholders for their contribution in shaping this year's WSIS Forum with commitment and ongoing support. We received more than 500 inputs and suggestions from stakeholders worldwide to shape the agenda and program of the 2021 WSIS Forum during virtual discussions and direct official submissions to the open consultation process. We are delighted to see well-balanced contributions in terms of geographical location, gender balance, and stakeholder type, which has shown the positive commitment towards the WSIS process and the strengthening of the WSIS implementation of activities to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. We would also like to extend a warm thank you to our partners, without whom this forum would not be possible. Thank you, and we look forward to a successful 2021 WSIS Forum.
Thank you, WSIS, for that wonderful video to give you an overview of where we have come. We're very excited about the week that we have begun and that we are continuing. So to WSIS and ITU, we really appreciate being your partners on behalf of the Global Coalition on Aging. My name is Melissa Gong Mitchell, Executive Director. This is our second year for the Older Persons and ICTs track. And last year, we just had a great turnout, some great conversations that not only were we excited to do to this track again with 5 panels and 27 incredible speakers, but we are really proud to be partners in the first ever Aging Better with ICTs Hackathon and the first ever Healthy Aging Innovation Prize, which was just spoken about in the video. And so I really can't wait to crown those winners during the final week of WSIS next month. So also, if you are on this discussion today and you're with us, one of the nearly 1,000 participants in our hackathon, this panel is really the best mentor session I think you could ask for. We have a group of experts who have created startups, they've mentored startups, they've enabled real change in the aging field, so you're going to learn a lot. And today we are going to talk about ageism. It's a topic that we can't resolve fast enough. It is also so related to the WSIS ICT's focus mission. Tech can break down barriers associated with ageism because it is enabling, but tech can also perpetuate ageist attitudes and perceptions. So today we want to bust myths about ageism. I'm going to start with a little bit of background and then dig into the expertise that we have with us today. Older adults, we know, make up a huge market opportunity, one that you would imagine that entrepreneurs, especially tech entrepreneurs, would want to capitalize on. But the older population is too often overlooked because of ageism. According to the WHO, who's one of the WIS's partner organizations, ageism is the stereotyping and discrimination against individuals or groups on the basis of their age, and it can take many forms, including prejudicial attitudes, discriminatory practices, or institutional policies and practices that perpetuate the stereotypical beliefs. And just last month, the WHO and the UN released the first ever global report on ageism. It showed that 1 in 2 people worldwide are ageist against older people. So let that sink in. Ageism persists, we know, in the workplace. It truly is the last acceptable form of discrimination that we see in the workplace and broadly. Ageism persists in our healthcare system. Too often, conditions that increase in prevalence with age, like heart failure or osteoporosis or macular degeneration, too often they're assumed to just be normal parts of aging, and therefore they go undiagnosed and they go untreated. And therefore, ageism is detrimental to healthy aging. Just last week, The Lancet put out a report that focused on ageism, and it said, ageism impacts all aspects of older people's health. For instance, it shortens their lifespan, it worsens their physical and mental health, hinders recovery from disability, and accelerates cognitive decline. Ageism also exacerbates social isolation and loneliness and reduces access to employment, education, and healthcare, all of which impact health. On the economic side, annually, ageism accounts for $1 in every $7, or $63 billion spent in the US on healthcare for the 8 conditions with the highest healthcare cost among people 60 and older. So what is kind of exciting about this is that tech is an area of particular opportunity because it can measurably improve lives, which in turn relieves burdens on health systems, which in turn contributes to economic growth and fiscal sustainability. We know that ageism is a global problem, and major global organizations like the WHO and UN are stepping in. I mentioned the Global Report on Ageism. Well, it outlines a framework for actions to reduce ageism. The report addressed the impact of ageism as it relates to technology and ICT specifically. And it says, older adults can internalize the stereotype that they cannot master technology. If older consumers do not expect to see age-friendly technologies in the marketplace, then it could reduce market demand and negatively impact age-friendly innovation. I hope my mom is listening. It also says older adults are seldom included in focus groups assessing the design of new digital technologies, which could prevent the development of new age-friendly technologies. So these are clear challenges that are associated with the exclusion of older people, and it also demonstrates a very clear opportunity for inclusion. So just today in the Wall Street Journal, Prime Minister Suga from Japan, which is the world's first super aging society, wrote, "With the digital revolution, we aim to bring everyone into the digital economy. Japan will make full use of technology to create a society that leaves no one behind." So with that in mind, today, let's explore the gaps between the stereotypes around older adults and technology, as well as examine specific examples of age-friendly technologies that defy these stereotypes. And let's use the collective experience of this amazing panel to explore how we change from a mindset of ageism to action that is inclusive. So who do we have with us today? A really great panel. I want to introduce you guys quickly, and then I'm going to start with intro questions for each of you. Han Van Doorn, he is the winner of a competition called Startup Plus. He created this new incredible invention called Are You OK Today? I'm very excited to have you because you started your business at 82, today 84. We also have Danielle Duplin, the co-founder and global director of Agency Worldwide Innovation for Living Longer and Aging Better. We met in Helsinki, even though we live in cities that are very close to each other, but that's what you have to do sometimes to understand the opportunities of entrepreneurship. And I've never met someone quite as passionate as Danielle about senior entrepreneurship. Stephen Johnston is with us today. He founded Aging 2.0 almost 10 years ago, and that was really revolutionary at the time, a global innovation platform for aging and care. At that time, tech innovations for older people, it just wasn't something we were all thinking about. We were just trying to get folks to talk about this issue. So thanks for being here. And Daria Myers is the co-founder of Everlasting and the former managing director of Estee Lauder Ventures. She's a veteran of the beauty industry, an entrepreneur and an advocate for women, especially women who want to maintain their lust for life at any age. And I'm looking forward to hearing about her efforts to combat ageism, especially for women who are held to higher standards because of so much in the media and pop culture. So with that, I'm going to start with introductions. I'm going to start with Danielle, actually. I want you to tell us about agency and how it is tackling ageist stereotypes and fostering innovation within the ICT and technology sector. And then I'll go to Han after that.
Well, thank you for that introduction, and thank you to WSIS for inviting us and convening this panel, particularly the global perspectives, in that aging is clearly a universal truth that we all share. And the spotlight clearly was on older populations through this pandemic, which we should definitely talk about later on in the conversation. So we co-founded Agency a couple of years ago with the singular purpose to help innovators really improve the aging journey. I mean, entrepreneurs love solving wicked problems with the upside potential to change the world. And this is it. So we know we're living longer, but are we aging better? And we launched Agency a couple of years ago. I'm glad you mentioned Japan's focus on aging and technology. We started it with a hackathon that was actually a little bit of an experiment just to tap into the Boston Cambridge ecosystem to see who might be interested in this topic. And it was sponsored by a Japanese company, largest insurance provider and nursing care provider. So they got to see at scale the condition of older adults, the caregiver gap, the impact of dementia, and so forth. And we were so surprised at the range of ideas that came out of that hackathon. Some no-tech marketing solutions, public awareness campaigns. One was called Talk to Tilly, about the impact of loneliness and what might it be like if you just talked to an older neighbor. So technology would be used to share that campaign broadly through social media, but the message was pure and simple and so deeply impactful. To high-tech software solutions for care coordination between patients, hospitals, caregivers, rehab, and so forth. To biotech solutions that were very forward-looking, blood tests to look for biomarkers for Alzheimer's disease. We have an entrepreneur that's doing brain scans looking for biomarkers for Alzheimer's disease, early diagnostics. So we saw the range of solutions approaching a range of concerns, and that coupled with a very strong support from our elected officials who were launching a very robust, forward-looking, age-strong campaign in Boston. It really came together to say, there's an ecosystem here that needs to be activated and connected. And so we built Agency as a place for co-working, for folks to work together side by side with other innovators across every sector, and convene folks through events and gatherings and connecting them to resources that they need, all with a lens towards commercializing products and solutions for this market. And this market is not just for older adults, it's for the families that love them, it's for the caregivers, it's for the health providers, it's for the elected officials that want to have age-friendly cities, it's for the housing authorities that want to make age-friendly practices. So really each and every one of us is called upon to be a little more innovative into how we think about the aging journey and what role we play in our own individual places of work and our own talents to have agency to improve this journey together.
Thanks, Danielle. Every time I hear about Agency, I learn a little bit more, and it's so exciting. I think that inclusiveness and understanding the ecosystem is such a critical piece. It's not just these tiny little, these specific innovations that are needed, but it is about creating an ecosystem that is more inclusive and works better.
And innovation at small scale, something in your hands that you could use today, to systems level innovation, like a complete overhaul in policy, employer benefits, et cetera. So we can get
exactly. We will dig in, and let's let others introduce themselves. So Han comes from the Netherlands today, and Han, you became an entrepreneur at 82 years old. So I have to mention that because I think it's so exciting. So tell us about what you are doing, how your own personal experience in life led you to start Are You OK Today, and how does your invention leverage technology to support today's caregiving dynamics?
I like to do that. I was born 84 years ago in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. I have a technical background and I have been married very happily for 50 years. I have 2 children and 4 grandchildren. I was caregiver for my wife with dementia for 5 years. I have experienced that as very heavy. This was one of the triggers for my project that I will tell you a little bit about it right now. Pretend I fell down the stairs. How long will it take before somebody finds me? I have seen that with my sister-in-law. Terrible. My son Matthew often calls me with an excuse. He asks me, how is your vegetable garden and your chickens? But he is not interested at all in that. He is worried about his old father. So we both have a problem. What do you do if you have a problem? You sit down the table and you put your requirements on the table. I ask Matthew, what do you want? He wants an app with a traffic light, and if the traffic light is green, then everything is okay with me. And what I want, my requirements were absolutely nothing. I did not like to wear a button, something about my wrist, no cameras, no sensors, nothing at all. But I need 100% privacy. It took us a couple of months before we find a solution. And after a year, we built a system and we tested that in 100 locations for 3 months in the Netherlands. And it worked perfect. I hear your question, how does that work? I will tell you the answer. Like anybody else, I use electricity for boiling water, prepare coffee, etc. I have made a self-learning system that learns the pattern of the electricity consumption of each individual device in my home. And when the system detects a deviation, then he will not call Matthew because then my privacy is gone. The system will call me. And if I do not answer, then the traffic light is changing from green into orange and Matthew is informed. And when it takes longer, the traffic light will become right. This free app, Are You Okay Today, has changed my life. I feel safe again in my own home. I wanted to help families across the globe experiencing the similar issues and the impact it will have on their life. For that reason, I followed last year a silver starter course for people of 50 plus in order to become entrepreneur. I have learned that starting at older age has many, many advantages. Starting this project was one of the most interesting choices in my life.
Thank you for giving us that background, and that gets to the point of the whole ecosystem and who these innovations are benefiting. A colleague of ours, Ian Philp, has had work for decades, and he says you need to ask older people not only what they need, but really what they want. And I think that's important in any innovation. When you're trying to create something new, you're asking people what they want and what they need, and it's not any different for the needs of older people. I just think it's a new space that we're getting into. So thank you for helping chart that path, Han. So let me go to Daria now. We're really excited to have you with us. You've been in the beauty industry. You've been in this space. You've seen what ageism, how ageism can be a challenge. So I'd love to hear a little bit in your introduction about your experience, but also what your next venture is, Everlasting, and how that fosters healthier and more active aging and empowerment.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Melissa, and thank you for inviting me to be on the panel today. Let me start with the background that led my partner and I to start our new business that's called Everlasting. So both of us have spent many years in the beauty industry. I spent my entire corporate career in the beauty industry, decades actually. And we were struck by how youth obsessed the industry had become and how the notion of beauty came to the point of being entirely defined by youth. Beauty equals youth. To the point where women of a certain age, 45 plus, 55 plus, were feeling marginalized, ignored, invisible, and often disrespected by the industry. We don't see ourselves in beauty advertising. What we see primarily are 20-somethings. And the only beauty products that are marketed to us are under the banner of anti-aging. As if aging is a terrible place to be and a terrible moment to look forward to in our lives. Yet research consistently shows that women at that stage in life actually feel happier, freer, more confident, and more comfortable in their own skin, and just feel better than any other stage in their lives. So what the industry has done and what media has done is set up a fear of aging. And these anti-aging products are not just marketed to women over 50, they're marketed to women, young women, even in their 20s. So the beauty industry, and now along with other industries that market to other aspects of aging, such as negatives of incontinence and menopause and hearing loss, they've all set up this very scary perspective about aging. And for the most part, the media in general portrays women of a certain age as dowdy and frumpy and not engaged in life. This is actually an example of pure ageism, and it perpetuates what we call self-ageism. So we start to see these images and start to believe them. We can become our own worst enemies. So my partner and I really wanted to bust this myth. We don't endorse self-ageism. So we created our new company called Everlusting. It's a mindset, a movement, and a soon-to-be marketplace for women of a certain age who still have this insatiable lust for life. We're still deeply engaged in the world, and we want to inspire others to feel the same. So right now we're publishing these myth-busting articles on our own website blog and on other social platforms. And we're currently creating our e-commerce marketplace, which will have a curated selection of products across multiple lifestyle categories, as well as our own original products. And the products are being designed to really stimulate the senses, because we know that as we get older, our senses do become a little duller, and the best way to engage in life is to really engage your senses, to experience the rich tastes, smells, aromas, sounds, to help us feel really excited and engaged in life on a daily basis. So there'll be more to come about Everlusting.
Thanks, Daria. It's really exciting to hear. We actually had a question come in talking about this incredible opportunity that the beauty industry, they want to completely ignore, but it is a huge business opportunity. And clearly you've learned that over time. And it's exciting to see how you have done the research and you understand the background and you want to understand how to meet those needs of older women of all ages, really women of all ages. So thank you for charting the path. I know it's been a challenge. So finally, our last panelist is Stephen Johnston. Many of you probably in this world know Stephen, the founder of Aging 2.0. Tell us what you're working on now and how you've seen, even over time, Aging 2.0 help bust some of those myths about tech and older people.
Thank you. Yeah, hi, Melissa, and hi, everybody. Great to be here. It's been a decade, I guess, since we started Aging 2.0, really to try and connect the tech and innovation world with aging and senior care. Very much a social enterprise, developing chapters around the world, developing volunteer-run local communities to try and understand how we can essentially elevate and champion startups and the tech world. Silicon Valley wasn't particularly interested in the aging space, and arguably it still is. I think we can discuss that. I think things have changed, but it's still, I think, some way to go. But I think what has changed is the recognition, awareness in the space around the demographic shifts that we're seeing, and the undisputed impact and power of the longevity economy, as some would call it. Our approach it's been a bit different perhaps from many others who have been more focused on sort of ageism in this space, where we were very much the sort of positive approach, the mindset. We started off by just sort of focusing on the successes, if you like, focusing on the startups that were there, rather than sort of, we're just very scrappy organizations, sort of self-funded and network. So we didn't sort of take it upon ourselves to kind of fix ageism. We wanted to shine a light on the things that were working, and then hopefully those things would set in chain of events. So very similar in terms of the logic Daniela was talking about, systems change. This is really, I think, the key to it. And I think when we see successes, we see entrepreneurs, we see innovators making a difference, that attracts others, that builds momentum. It's, having just lived in Silicon Valley for the last 5 years, sort of the idea of VCs following the money, following success stories, putting cash in success stories. I always like to be sort of second into the hot deal, I think is something that will change once we see successes. And so for us, the interesting thing has been, how do we change the paradigm? How do we go from 1.0 to 2.0 in terms of following what we saw in the Web 2.0 movement? And the sort of the shift, I think, that we've been seeing recently has been a maturing of the space and a recognition, obviously, with the terrible pandemic, of the importance of population health, of the importance of digital health solutions. And some of the funding rounds just in the last month have been fantastic for companies which are serving primarily older audiences and seeing dramatic uptake in telehealth. I mean, just this week, Papo, which is a startup down in Miami, got 60 million additional funding for their sort of telehealth solution, and they really started off as a grandkids on demand solution. So I think the story that we're trying to make is, yes, there's definitely a lot of needs and a lot of work to be done, but let's sort of champion the successes and let's identify the missions that we can collectively work on, because part of the challenge that we've seen is these siloed thinking and the silos and lack of sharing best practices, lack of sharing ideas. And that's why we've got the Grand Challenges framework. We've got now 130 chapters around the world with these grand challenges of sort of topics that people can coalesce around. So my response is, are there success stories that are happening in Timbuktu in South America or in China that we can shine a light on and show that innovation is a universal attracting element and can overcome all sorts of challenges. So great to be here and excited to kind of build this global community as we're doing here today.
Great. And thanks for your work over the years, Stephen. There's lots of work still left to do. But I think all of your comments leave me, and I've heard sort of as a thread through all of this, we talk about there's, designing for older people, there's making sure we best specifically about older people. And we sometimes inherently sort of create these divisions, right? There's the old and the young, but we also talk about the importance of the whole ecosystem. We talk about the importance of bringing in intergenerational collaboration, new ideas together, and that's what's going to help lead to success. Collaboration will help lead to success. So I want all of you to kind of address this question. Maybe I'll start with you, Danielle. Too often we do have this sort of us versus them mentality that's across generations or across different sectors, and it makes it really challenging to make that progress. How does technology and tech innovation and the ecosystem that is developing, how can that, or how is that being a uniter, and how are you seeing that sort of develop over time to help get us to where we need to be? So I guess a little bit the question is, how are you seeing the challenge and how are we seeing it evolve?
Yeah, so it's a great question. One thing, several observations that we've all lived through with the pandemic, I see two things. One, radical empathy now across the world about the aging journey, right? As we saw, folks desperate to try and connect with their older loved ones where they couldn't connect in person any longer. So we saw this acceleration of tech enablement to kind of connect people and bring resources and life-saving medicines to people and telehealth visits, as Stephen mentioned, and ways to, just connect with loved ones and family members. And also a radical collaboration. We see scientists from all over the world who heretofore might have been, competitors sharing, large corporations. We see multi-generations kind of jumping in to help each other out. Our neighbors formed together just to make vaccine appointments for the older residents in our town. I mean, so they're folks that were, called to meet the moment. And so it's fascinating to me to see now, what can we build from there? What's the renaissance phase of this pandemic as we come through it, where now we could recombine this technology, this new level of understanding to come up with some better solutions that we know can work at scale and can be affordable and accessible to everyone who needs them. So we work at agency at the Cambridge Innovation Center, which is an innovation network and co-working global locations around the world. And so we see different age groups, different sectors convening to apply the best of all. Like, how can sensors be used, in the home? How can autonomous vehicles be used more for older adults or folks who are having trouble driving? So, we see this intersection. I mean, and really intersectionality is where the best ideas come from anyway.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and there is data that, intergenerational teams are actually more productive. And so I think when you can solve from many different perspectives, that's probably going to be the best way to go about it. Han, I think you want to chime in on this topic. And I think related to this, I think our folks who are with us are wondering, did you face ageism when you were working on your startup? Do you see that sort of challenge across generations as you're doing your work?
No, I think it is a big advantage if you start doing things what I did in older age. I find out that my age and my vitality, together with my innovative project, is a unique selling point, which makes it very easily to attract publicity. As a result, I have already a database of 1,500 emails of people that are interested in it. And in the past, I would never come up with this idea to design a project like this, because now I understand the problem. I didn't do that before. And I have solved my own problem. And when I try to sell that people easier believes me, because it is my own problem. And due to my experience that I have, I do not fall in pitfalls so easy again. And at last, I have learned as an octogenarian that it is easier to grow old vitally if you have a purpose in your life, if you know why you are coming out of bed in the morning.
I love that you talked about experience. That's incredible, because that's going to lead to your success. And you talked about purpose. And I think that's a critical thing. There's this assumption, this is an ageist assumption, that we don't have purpose anymore as we age. And the fact that you show that because of your experience is just a great lesson to take. Derry, I want you to comment on this as well, because I think it relates to the the anti-aging question in the beauty industry, in terms of how do you break through those barriers when the generations are pitted against each other?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that, first of all, I think generations need to collaborate, and there needs to be intergenerational work opportunities so that we understand each other better and have empathy for each other. But I think one of the key things I want to get across that I mentioned earlier is that we have to create an image of aging in the media and across industries that is much more positive than what has been out there. So to remove the fear of aging, there's actually a clinical condition called Jurassicophobia. And this is actually the fear of aging. And what's surprising in recent research is that they found that millennials have the greatest fear of aging. The fear of what it will mean physically, what it will mean to be alone, to be lonely. Danielle mentioned that before. And this has all been perpetuated by society. And so we, as the older generation, need to inspire younger people. That's what Han is doing. That's what Danielle's organization is doing. So we need to now, make the pendulum swing the other way and be the flag wavers for what getting older, not old, but getting older looks like. And I think a lot of it has to do with visual imagery. We need to change the images of what older people look like. And I made the distinction between old and older. And our tagline for Everlasting is, I may be older, but I will never be old. And that was chosen very purposefully because old is a mindset. You can be old at 30, you can be old at 40, but you can feel young at 80, like Han. And older is just about getting older chronologically, but you can still feel very young. So I think we need to really get out there with examples, be inspiring to younger people, and again, change a lot of the visual imagery that's out there.
Old is a mindset. I think that's absolutely right. And we see that because there's so much of this, just this self-inflicted fear and the self-inflicted ageism that develops over time, and our society brings that on us. So thank you for helping bring that to light. But that's one I'll definitely take with me. Stephen, what did you have to add to this particular question?
Yeah, no, following on from that, I wondered if you'd heard of this stat, which I just read the other day. I thought it was fascinating. And there was more physicians who are members of the unaccredited anti-aging physician society in the US than there are geriatricians in the US, just as an example of this sort of the marketing. And I do think we have there's a lot of reasons that this issue is coming is that it's convenient for certain sectors of the population who are in the same way that we've got a $4 trillion healthcare industry in the States and 18% of GDP, whereas it's sort of 9 or 10% in most other countries. It's working very well for a certain group of people who are making the $4 trillion there. So I think there is also, it doesn't have to be like this. There are other models that we can start to look at. What Chip Conley is doing with the Modern Elder Academy, I'm not sure if he's been involved in here, just fantastic example of elevating the role of older people, providing new purpose, as we've already talked about, providing a sort of a sense of this new burgeoning middle age or sort of middle stage of life, which I think is really inspiring. It's sort of something to look forward to. We've seen innovators such as folks like Diaspo in the UK, which is this wonderful Indian entrepreneur who's giving older people, a lot of them older Indians in the UK, opportunities to share their cooking with other people on Zoom calls, and sort of they got these 10 or 15 people on the Zoom call. They love it, and they're learning and they're generating, they're connecting, and both sides are benefiting. You've got places like Silvernest, which you've got young people, older people living together. In Ham's country and in Holland, there's a lot of these intergenerational sort of student models where they get models there. So I think it's probably, I would just caution against us sort of saying there is a tension between the generations. I think there has been a tension, but I don't think there needs to be a tension. I think sometimes we are unwittingly sort of supporting stereotypes that might have another agenda, and frankly, a lot of the time it's quite a lucrative agenda for a certain section of society.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really important point, because sometimes we just, yes, we do. We unwittingly continue, in some of these stereotypes. And so we have to be careful to make sure that we are showcasing the best of the best. And it's really what you all are doing. I want to turn, Danielle had mentioned sort of how in COVID, it helped us sort of find new challenges and also new opportunities. And I wonder if for all of you, you sort of felt that there was you saw new opportunities, you saw new innovation come out of COVID. I know in the United States and other places around the world, we saw this uptick in telehealth and telemedicine. So there's this attention to how technology can solve some of the challenges that we face with an older population. And it brought attention that the older population was a demographic that needed to be served in a way that hadn't been before. So just more attention to the same issue. What did you all see in your different geographies around the world and in your work?
So, yeah, so we run an organization out of agency called the Founders Over 55 Club. And we saw during this past year membership more than triple.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, the events. And it was a strong signal to us that pandemic and really the changes in how we work and the future of work really has an impact on the workforce. And there'll be lots and lots of studies going forward. But what we see, like in the field, is that a lot of folks, particularly in their late 50s, were unfortunately now given severance packages, may not necessarily return to their corporate careers, and are looking for that purpose that Han mentioned. And so the Founders Over 55 Club, we started this a couple of years ago in reaction to ageism, quite frankly, in venture capital. There was a VC on stage at some event in New York that said, I will never give funding to a founder over the age of 40. And so a lot of folks were like buzzing my phone saying, well, what do you think about that? So to Daria's point, like representation matters. So like, let's just showcase that entrepreneurs in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s can build great companies. And as a signal to Stephen's point, can attract funding, can attract customers, can be a thriving company, and in fact, can attract multi-generations to learn from one another. And so, we're finding that folks, who feel left out of the future of work are saying, you know what, I'm going to come back to work, but this time as an entrepreneur, and I'm going to create a company of my dreams. I'm going to turn my hobby into a company, or I'm going to use my expertise and share that in different contexts with the world, and build a company around that.
Great, thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, just another angle of COVID has been, I think, the power of place and the recognition of the importance of where you live. And if you are lucky enough to live in a nice place, it makes such a difference. And the realization then of the integration of healthcare in housing experiences. It's often been quite a separate world between the housing world and the health world, and we're really seeing those connect. I've been lucky enough to be in Australia for the last year, and we've had a very good response. But even so, that was basically 5 months in a flat without hardly leaving the house, and that was part of the reason able to lock the door. But it really does make you appreciate the sort of the local texture and things like I'm seeing sort of innovation opportunities around people doing like gardens, vertical gardens in people's homes, and creating again wisdom from how do you run a gardening initiative and look after plants and sort of and connect with your neighbors so that you can do things together. And I think there's this sort of forced locality which does have potential to ensure that we get to know our neighbors, because I was guilty as anybody by jumping on a plane and knowing folks in San Francisco and London and wherever, but not perhaps knowing the people next door. And I think that's for me been a real interesting wake-up call, which is you can only really sort of thrive if you are connected in your locality. A lot of the Blue Zones initiatives, I think, have really done a nice job of making that case. And I think recognizing that health is local has been a huge takeaway for me.
Thanks, Stephen. Han, you wanted to add?
My experience is that older age is one of the most interesting phase in my life. I So starting a business, because I have a technical background, then I had no idea how to launch an app like this. And as a gift from heaven, I heard about the Silver Starter program from EIT Health to become a senior entrepreneur. And that after such a course, it helped me a lot to launch Are You OK Today to the market. So there is many help around for if you are older age, there is a lot of help if you are good looking for it.
I think you're right. I think there are interested people who want to facilitate this type of innovation. I first heard your name, Han. I had not met you yet. Back in the end of 2019, I was at Aegon, who's one of our member companies in The Hague, and they were working on this Silver Starters program. And there was a lot of buzz and excitement. This was at the end of that year about this 82-year-old entrepreneur, and they couldn't wait to share some of the great innovation that was happening. And then later they announced you as the winner of that program. And so it's really great to see how you've had the support. And I think you're very right. It's really figuring out what are the networks that are going to help facilitate that support. So I think it's very encouraging to hear that you have charted this path for yourself, and you have an experience. You have not experienced, terrible ageism, but people understand you're solving for a problem, and it's going to be a really powerful solution. So thank you for sharing your experience.
And what interesting was that it was an insurance company that finally did that. And it is not the government, but it is the industry that helped me. That's interesting.
We had a panel earlier this week, and they were talking about the value of sensors and things like that. But which I think are extremely valuable in the home as well. But I think your incredible innovation about having a technology or a monitoring system that is non-intrusive. It does not impinge upon your privacy. It does not have your son checking in on you when you don't want to be checked in on. I think it's definitely an amazing innovation. Great. So on that, does anyone else have any other sort of comments that are related to sort of the opportunities we're seeing?
Well, I think for sure, let's not waste a crisis. And a lot of the technology adoption that we saw accelerated over this past decade, this past year, let's build from there, right? And I think there's a lot of attitudinal shifts as well as technology. So around telehealth and around connecting to Stephen's point, how do you bring, this global community that we've all created in our professional lives and personal lives, but bring it, to feel like it's right there in your own home. Let's keep going, because it really can serve everyone's best interest, whether or not we're in a global pandemic.
Yeah, I would just like to add one thing about that as well, build upon that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jerry.
That over the past year, I think everybody, all types of businesses and institutions had to pivot because of everything going virtual. So there has been an enormous amount of the arts and cultural opportunities online, virtually. So museums were offering virtual tours. There are concerts online, ballets online, and so getting back to the need to engage the senses for older people, there's certainly been, so much of that, and maybe even more opportunity for older people who don't often get out to do these things in person. We were afforded all of that online. So I think that's something that can be built upon even as we do re-enter the world.
Derry, I love that take on it. I really hadn't thought about it in that way. So I think that's something that we want to explore and sort of use that as a jumping off point as we look towards activities going forward, for us as a coalition, for the work that we might be doing here at WSIS. I think that's incredibly important. I was thinking as everyone was speaking, and I think about it often when we talk about this ageism conversation and we think about some of the challenges that are faced among generations, is that there's self-interest in making sure that we get this right for older generations today. because, I think about in my own family, I have a young daughter. She has a really good chance of living to be more than a century. And I want to make sure that she's on the right path to have a really productive and healthy and fulfilling life for all those 100 years. So it starts now because we want to make sure that that we get it right for ourselves and for our children. Is there any of that goes into thinking or that you've seen across founders that actually resonates? Because again, I think we're thinking, okay, how do we provide care today, which is a very important piece of it, but how does that benefit us in the future as technology evolves over time? Anyone want to hop in?
Well, there's a huge focus on care as a profession and care in the family. And so we, clearly we see the stresses on caregivers. So you mentioned your daughter. There's a lot of responsibility that falls upon the children to care for their aging parents. And we see 60, 70-year-olds caring for their 80, 90, 100-year-old parents. And so, how to create, again, those attitudinal shifts, the systems level, let's say benefits from employers, for elected officials to think about their full populations, how we care for one another as a society. How do we do that within a family? How do we do that within institutions and so forth? And so I think that we're seeing a lot of founders come to this work after they've retired and they see, the issues that they themselves were facing, let's say in downsizing their home and considering moving to senior care, or, caring for a spouse that's going through an illness and so forth. So a lot of folks return to this work having gone through a lived experience. And indeed, it very much includes the rest of their families. And we're also seeing the downside of that, or the very sad side of that, the rise of the elder orphan, right? Where who is caring for you when potentially it's not your own family. So I think, again, it's both the technology solutions that can help make that, go a little smoother, but it's also the attitudes and the social solutions that will make that really happen.
Great, thanks, Danielle.
I could build on the care agenda. One of our partners, Sompo, is a Japanese insurance company, and the CEO just gave a talk last week to the World Economic Forum talking about a society that he'd like to see in the future called the Pin Koro Society, which is basically a world in which you live long but die short. And I think an interesting part of this conversation is that people often don't talk about dying. They talk about living, and frankly, with the medicalization in the world, there is not really an option to die generally. It is far too often the case. 80+% of people don't have their advanced directives wishes carried out. They often end up dying in an expensive hospital bed, which against their wishes. And so I think there's something for us as a society, Melissa, when your daughter sort of gets to that age, is like, how do we prepare now for the young people to be creating that society, to be living their healthy lives, and to have education about nutrition and about intergenerational connection starting from the young, and not just something that we try and fix it like a band-aid when we're sort of a long way down the road. And we just ran a workshop with Stanford University around family caregiving, and one of the big challenges that we're finding is defining caregivers. It's very difficult to understand who family caregivers are, integrating them into the healthcare teams, defining the tasks that make up the role of the family caregiver. It's a bit of a black box right now. So I think as we sort of look to kind of move society towards this sort of Pin Koro world, it's going to have to be a recognition that this sort of family caregiving role which has been a sort of magical thing that happens, and there's all sorts of people working doing incredible work behind closed doors, needs to come into the open. There needs to be transparency. There needs to be recognition. There needs to be compensation and funding. There's a few models in the States and elsewhere that are now funding family caregivers and recognizing what they do. There's a few quite interesting new blockchain and crypto care coin ideas out there. So I think that's where we need to kind of think about these systems that Danielle mentioned around the family and the caregiving unit, but not expect people to do these things. And it's often the women who are doing the work that are not being recognized, not being compensated, and the data is not going in to drive the commercial outcomes. If we knew what was needed, it would be easier for the entrepreneurs to develop new initiatives to help change society to this sort of Pin-Coro model.
Yeah, no, I think that's, yeah, it's incredibly well said. And I think the spotlight on family caregivers is a very important thing, and to look at where, because we know family caregivers their health is worse. You know, they're caregivers, they care for other people, they put their own health last. And so where, how do we view that paradigm, and how do we find the solutions? Because we know that caregiving is something that can't be completely taken over by technology. Caregiving can be aided by technology. So I think what everyone is doing here today is an incredible example about how that works. But it is not going to be the only solution. We still need humans, we still need family, we still need support. So I think that's a great thing to consider. As we are running a little bit on time, I think we've addressed some of the questions that we've seen come through, but I want to sort of let everyone have a bit of a final takeaway. And it's related to your experience. You know, you've been in this space, you're seeing the challenges that have come up from ageism. You're also seeing and creating environments in which we dispel the myths and we create ecosystems where we're not hindered by ageism. Where do you want to see us being in the future? Where do you think the opportunity is, and are we going to get there? It's the decade of healthy aging. So how do we make sure we get there? I'm going to start with let's start with Han, and then we'll go to Daria, and then Stephen and Danielle to close it out.
Okay, thank
Han.
you. When you are retired, you can go traveling, play bingo, or other things, and that can be really fun. You can also sneak up and doing something and I have noticed that it's hugely satisfying if you do really something. And I should like to invite everyone, when you retire, ask yourself the question, what do I want to be?
Thank you, Han. That's a really great advice. All right, 30 seconds each. Daria.
Okay, so there is a lot happening in this space, and it's great to see that. And just in beauty and wellness, we see so many new companies being launched. So it's going in the right direction. But I think what I want to say is that we all need to lead by example, especially for your daughter, who's hopefully going to live to 100 years old. And we need to keep going. We need to keep reinventing ourselves, whatever that looks like. You know, we need to be portray the image out there that younger people will want to aspire to.
Love that. Thanks, Daria. Stephen.
Well, I think going forward, my 3-month-old son needs to get to know your daughter so they can sort of brain solutions together. That'd be a good little power team. I would say ageism is sort of can be overcome through, my hypothesis is that we can overcome the sort of the vacuum and the negativity of ageism with innovative approaches that are cross-sectoral and mission-driven. So Mariana Mazzucato, some of you will be familiar, has written some really nice stuff about sort of creating mission-driven economies. And I think what we can do is sort of get people excited about the positive, get people excited about the opportunity to be solved, both from the perspective of what the entrepreneurs can do, but in the partnership with the public and the private sector. And I think what your organization, Melissa, is doing so well is articulating that path of this is not just a private sector, it's not just a public sector. It needs both of those, and it needs entrepreneurs. So it's essentially systems with thinking, but we need to agree on certain key missions and cross silos to get them delivered.
Great. Danielle, you have the last word here.
So I would say my message to innovators worldwide is design for joy. So indeed, you know, we focus on solving problems. Let's solve for possibilities. Any product or service or message or marketing campaign that you put out into the universe, make sure it doesn't carry with it the stigma of aging. you know, put yourself in the place of somebody who is listening, learning, hearing, feeling it, right? Design for their highest aspiration, for their truest and best and most joyful self. And together, I love Dari's point, we won't need to fear growing older. Our tagline at Agency is growing older may be inevitable, but we don't need to dread it. So with that, I would say design for joy.
Thank you. What a great note to end on. We've covered so much ground today. You guys have made it clear that it's not an easy path, but you've charted it for us. We know innovation is not going to happen in a bubble. It's going to come from experience like yours. It's going to come from intergenerational collaborations and busting these myths that assuming that by putting ageism out there, we're going to stop doing that. It's really exciting. There's a diverse opportunity out there, and I hope that we all continue to pursue it. So with that, I'm going to thank WSIS and invite our participants to attend tomorrow. It's our closing track. It's the Decade of Healthy Aging, pushing through the role of digital and ICTs across the life course. Same time, same place. WSIS. We're going to thank our sponsors to close out today. Thank you all to my wonderful panelists. See everyone tomorrow. Bye-bye.